She bought a condemned house for a single dollar, with no running water, no electricity, no heat, and no construction experience, and then renovated it herself, from the foundation up, over the course of 37 weeks. Her name is Tia Weston. She's 29 years old, and she walked away from a stable career, a city she grew up in, and everything that looked like a safe bet, to do something that most people told her made no sense. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why she did it, why the story the internet told about her only got half of it right, and what she's actually building now that the famous $1 house is done. Tia Weston grew up in Fairdale, Kentucky, a small suburb just outside Louisville, the kind of place where the plan was always pretty clear. You go to school, you get a job, you buy a house close to home. You build your life inside the framework that's already there, because it works, and because that's what people do. Tia followed that plan. She got a job in health insurance. She bought a house in Louisville. She paid her bills, showed up to work, and built the life that was supposed to be the goal. Her parents, Brad and Cindy Weston, raised her and her younger brother Brent in the kind of household where stability mattered. And for a while she had it. But something about that version of stability started to feel like a ceiling. She had started a YouTube channel back in 2017. Nothing specific, nothing viral, just a space she was putting things into without any particular destination in mind. It sat mostly quiet for years, accumulating videos at a slow pace while she kept working her insurance job and paying down her mortgage. Then the pandemic happened, and the life she'd carefully constructed started to show its cracks. During COVID-19, her salary as a health insurance worker reportedly wasn't enough to keep pace with what she owed. The mortgage became a pressure point. The job that was supposed to be security was starting to feel more like a weight than a foundation. She didn't spiral. She didn't give up. She did something much more deliberate than either of those options. She sold the house, made roughly $30,000 on the sale, and started thinking about what to do next with a clarity that only comes from reaching a limit. And if you think leaving Louisville was the biggest decision she made in this period, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. Most people, after selling a house and leaving a stable job, would move somewhere more obvious, somewhere cheaper but still recognizable, somewhere with a safety net. Tia moved to North Dakota. Not a major city, a small town. The kind of place where houses regularly sell for under $100,000, where the landscape is open and the winters are severe, and where the idea of starting over doesn't feel abstract because there's very little infrastructure around you to catch you if you fall. She bought a house for $60,000, fixed it up, sold it for roughly a $30,000 profit. That was not luck. That was her testing a thesis, that she could generate returns by finding undervalued properties in places where other people weren't looking, and that the physical work of renovation was something she was capable of learning, even with zero formal training. The profit from that first North Dakota property gave her a position. Not a fortune. $30,000 doesn't change everything, but enough to take the next step. She went house hunting again, found a property she liked, started the process, and hit a wall when structural issues turned up. The deal fell apart. But the seller, before walking away, mentioned something almost in passing. There was another property, a small place he owned that he hadn't had the heart to put on the market. It had been sitting empty. It had been used for storage. It was in rough shape. Bad enough shape that it had been informally slated to become a training exercise for the local fire department, meaning it was going to be set on fire on purpose because no one thought it was worth saving. He said he'd basically give the house away to anyone willing to fix it. Tia said she might take that challenge. They drew up the paperwork for $1. Here's what the comments kept asking, and here's the answer they never got, until now. The internet ran with the dollar figure because it's undeniably arresting, a house for a single dollar. The headlines wrote themselves, but the number that came with the actual story was a lot bigger than one. The 1924 cottage in North Dakota had no running water, no functional electricity, no heat, no working plumbing. Parts of the floor had deteriorated so badly that you could look straight down through the boards into the basement. The plaster on the walls was falling. The foundation had issues that weren't cosmetic. This was not a fixer-upper in the conventional sense. This was a condemned structure that was days away from controlled incineration. And Tia, a woman who had never formally studied construction or renovation in her life, said yes to it. She came in with $32,000 from the sale of her previous Louisville property. That was the war chest. She used it for the most critical structural work first, the roof, which she and her father replaced section by section, though much of the original 1924 timber shingles were still sound. Then the electrics, then the walls and ceilings, then the plumbing. Her father was a consistent presence throughout the build. So was her camera. Because here's the part of the financial story that almost no one covered. She didn't have $40,000 in the bank when she started. The renovation cost approximately $40,000 in total. She had $32,000. The remaining difference came in during the project, earned through YouTube revenue generated by the videos she was posting as she worked. She was funding the renovation with the documentation of the renovation. The channel and the house were building each other simultaneously. The subscribers who watched her learn plumbing paid for her to learn plumbing. The viewers who came back every week to see what she'd done to the living room were part of the reason there was a living room. 37 weeks after she started, she moved in. At this point in the story, most people walked away. What she did instead is the part nobody talks about. Musing seti, imiser wide henvinstam button fidine. The fort in facey, the fast, wide, and shallow. The story spread because the price tag was wild. Because a young woman doing heavy structural work alone was visually compelling. Because it was the kind of content that travels. But the real reason she left Louisville gets lost in all of that. She's been clear about it in her own words, in fragments across dozens of videos. It wasn't primarily financial. The finances were the trigger, not the reason. The reason was that her health insurance salary, her Louisville mortgage, and the career track she was on were building a version of life that didn't match what she actually wanted to build. She was funding someone else's idea of a good outcome. The stability wasn't serving her. It was containing her. When she looked at North Dakota, with its low property values, its open land, its small towns full of empty houses slowly falling apart, she didn't see a place to retreat. She saw a place where her particular set of instincts would actually work, where someone willing to learn physical skills from scratch, tolerate discomfort, and document the whole process could build something real. She also saw a housing problem nobody was solving. In interviews and in videos, she's been specific about this. Her small town in North Dakota has more abandoned houses than it has residents willing to fix them. Properties sit empty for years, sometimes decades. The town loses something every time one of those houses falls past the point of saving. She didn't frame herself as a savior. She framed it as a match between what she was capable of and what the place actually needed. One phone call, one conversation. That's all it took to change the direction of everything. There's something in the way Tia talks about these properties that goes beyond renovation content. She describes the $1 house the same way a writer would describe a book that almost didn't get written, with a particular kind of relief that it exists at all. She said she remembered walking into it for the first time and immediately loving it, that it was small, that the layout made sense, that she could see what it was going to be before it was anything close to that. That instinct, the ability to see a finished thing inside a broken one, is not something she learned from a contractor or a YouTube tutorial. It's a mindset that came from somewhere deeper. She never romanticized how hard it was. The winters in North Dakota are genuinely brutal, and she was working in a structure with no heat during temperatures that dropped to -20 degrees. She was learning electrical work and plumbing and plastering in real time, making mistakes that she documented, then fixing those mistakes and documenting that too. Her audience became a resource, not just a viewership. Contractors and tradespeople in her comments would explain how to handle specific problems she ran into. People who'd renovated old houses for decades would share what to expect from 1924 construction. She absorbed it and kept working. The solo element matters too. She wasn't doing this with a partner or a crew. The social media content she produces also includes solo SUV camping trips taken in her Buick Enclave. She built out a pull-out kitchen in the back, which paints a consistent picture of a person who has chosen a life organized around self-reliance, not by accident but by conviction. And if you think that was surprising, the next section is the part that reframes everything you just heard. Shield coin. Once the $1 house was done, the easy move was to turn it into a rental, cash in on the attention, and pivot to brand deals. Tia bought another abandoned house. This one cost $15,000. She found it in the same small North Dakota town. It had been empty since December 2005. The previous owner had passed away that month, and in the 20 years since, nothing inside had been touched. Stubbed out cigarette butts still sitting in an ashtray. Dishes on the drying rack, covered in dust. A calendar on the kitchen wall pinned permanently to December 2005. She described walking through it like walking through stop time. The structural challenges are arguably worse than the $1 house. The foundation is crumbling, plaster is falling. In places, the floorboards are damaged badly enough to see straight through into the basement. She said herself that a few of the rooms were, quote, A bit scary to say the least, and she bought it anyway. Because this is the detail that changes the interpretation of everything she's done. She's not building a personal brand around renovation. She's actually trying to solve the specific housing problem in the specific town she chose to live in. Her stated goal, repeated across interviews and video descriptions, is to take houses that are sitting empty and get people living in them again. Every time she finishes one and moves on to the next, the town gets something back. The second house purchase confirmed that the $1 house wasn't a stunt. It was the opening move in a longer plan. Most people who know this story stop here, but the real story starts right now. Here's what Tia Weston's YouTube channel looks like from the outside in 2025 and into 2026. Her channel is pulling an estimated 4.74 million views per month. That's not a backyard renovation account grinding toward its first milestone. That's a legitimate media operation built on weekly Sunday uploads and genuine audience loyalty. She earned approximately $32,000 from the sale of her Fairdale renovated Louisville home at the start of this journey. Her estimated monthly YouTube income is now somewhere between $12,000 and $16,000. The channel she started in 2017 and largely ignored for years became the financial backbone of the life she rebuilt from scratch. The audience that found her through the $1 house story is unusually engaged. The comment sections on her videos consistently contain people offering trade knowledge, renovation experience, and personal encouragement, not the kind of passive viewership that leaves a like and moves on. One subscriber once wrote into her comments that she had just turned 74 and that Tia was doing what she had dreamed of doing her whole adult life. That comment got thousands of responses. The audience sees themselves in her, not because they've all bought condemned houses, but because the emotional logic of what she did resonates across age groups and circumstances. The idea that at some point, the life you've been building stops being the life you want, and you have to make a choice about what to do with that realization. Tia made the choice, physically, publicly, with a camera running. She never talked about this publicly, until now. The second abandoned house is currently being documented, week by week, on her channel. The exterior of the second property is starting to show signs of what it's going to become. The transformation is underway, and the audience that came for the $1 house has largely stayed for this one. What Tia is building is not complicated to describe, but it is unusual enough to be worth saying directly. She moved at 29 to a small town in North Dakota where most people wouldn't. She learned construction skills she didn't have by doing them in front of a camera. She used the revenue from documenting hard work to fund more hard work. She then took the attention that came from finishing the first project and redirected it into a second one. No business partner, no production company, no team of editors shooting beauty footage of her holding a hammer for brand purposes. One woman, one camera, one house at a time, in a place with winters that would make most people turn around at the airport. The breadcrumbs of her stated reasoning point to something that doesn't fit neatly into the usual content creator narrative. She didn't leave Louisville to become an influencer. She left Louisville to build a life she could actually live in. The audience came because what she was doing was real, and people can feel the difference between someone performing self-reliance and someone actually practicing it. At 29, in a small North Dakota town most Americans couldn't find on a map, Tia Weston is doing what very few people in her position have done, turning the thing that was supposed to be content into something that actually matters to the place where she lives. Tia Weston didn't accidentally end up in an abandoned house in North Dakota. She chose it, after doing the math, testing the model, and deciding that the version of life she'd been handed wasn't worth keeping just because it was familiar. The $1 house made her famous. The second house is what confirmed her intention. And the channel that was supposed to be a record of the renovation turned out to be the thing that funded it, which means she built something genuinely new out of parts that weren't supposed to go together. She's currently mid-renovation on that second time capsule property, uploading every Sunday, building the kind of audience that stays because they've committed to the story as much as she has. Do you think Tia was right to walk away from a stable career and start completely from scratch, or was the risk too high to justify the outcome?